How hot is a coffee where you are?
I'm used to Stanley Nyerungita, karibu sana. For Biashara Tuesday, we'll be discussing why the shilling and the dollar will be affecting you as common mwananchi and how it really matters. Stick around for that.
Very hot conversation, yes. But before that, let's take a quick look at the dailies this morning. Raila AU bid splits Azimio principles. That's a big headline on the Standard.
On the People Daily, how Ruto spent 3.3 billion Kenyan shillings on luxury. We'll be telling you why and all those numbers below there.
Stated new plan to monitor your internet footprint. How about that? Big Brother is watching.
On Business Daily, how regulator inflated power prices by 70 billion Kenyan shillings in 5 years. Wow.
Pressure Uhuru apewe kazi ya AU. Habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo.
Kwenye gazeti la Daily Nation, death traps in schools. We'll be telling you the safety standards manual.
All right, those are the dailies this morning. Let's take a look at the weather this morning. Very interesting figures.
And actually, for today, I'll be getting deeper into it. So today we start with what the Kenya Meteorological Department is telling you. And they say from today all the way to the 26th of February, expect sunny and dry weather across most of the country. However, areas in the South Rift Valley, Lake Victoria Basin, highlands east-west of the Rift Valley, southeastern lowlands, coast, and northeastern Kenya may see light, moderate rainfall. And that they have the whole country and various parts of it just showing you. Let's get into see how the high day temperatures might be. And they say it might be exceeding 30 degrees Celsius expected in various counties. So while some parts of the certain counties may experience low nighttime temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius, and they're telling you stay prepared for fluctuating weather conditions this week. And to top it off, they say make sure to stay hydrated and protect yourself from the sun's rays during the hot days and bundle up warmly for the cooler nights. I love that bit.
How hot is it right now?
No, mostly what they say bundle up warmly.
Okay. I'm asking how hot is it right now?
Yesterday, let's take a look at how Naivasha is. Let's see how today in Mombasa is. 27 degrees Celsius.
At 6 a.m., 27 degrees Celsius.
Yes. There it is. At 6 a.m., as high as 27 degrees. Now, you remember the Met Department saying around coast they might experience moderate rainfall. So maybe this is what they are experiencing right now. Okay. In different parts of the coast region, 27 degrees Celsius. But it promises to get as hot as 31 degrees Celsius in the daytime temperatures. That is how...
And I'm looking up there, they're saying that right now it is 27 degrees Celsius, but it feels like 32.
Yes, it feels like 32 degrees Celsius.
Interesting.
Oh, yes. But if you're in Mombasa...
In Nairobi, it's about 19 degrees.
Yes, I had taken a look at it earlier. There it is, 19 degrees Celsius, but they're saying it feels like 25 degrees Celsius.
Wow, yes, it does feel
hot. It actually does.
I know we're generally hot people, but then again, these temperatures are too hot.
In Nairobi, promises to get as hot as, let's see, 28 degrees Celsius. But then, as they say again, expect fluctuating weather patterns and all that for today. So if you're in Mombasa, Nairobi, and different parts of the country, tell us how hot is wherever you are and how the temperature is looking like. Let's get into the highlights now.
And yes, our top highlight has to do with that weather pattern. High daytime temperatures exceeding 30 degrees Celsius expected in various parts, including Nairobi, with the weatherman issuing an advisory for people to stay hydrated and to protect themselves from the sun's rays during the hot days.
And Cabinet kicks off three-day workshop this morning at the ongoing annual National Executive Retreat in Naivasha, led by President William Ruto.
And Tanzanians online expressed concern that a newly unveiled statue in honor of their founding father, President Julius Nyerere, outside the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa does not look like him. Does it? Is that really Nyerere? Okay, I know most people, even Nyaringita, may not really have a true picture of what Julius Nyerere looked like.
But our Cape Media historian, Iaz is telling us that's true. That's not him.
That's not him.
That's not him.
That must be someone else.
Oh, yes.
Must be John Kamau from somewhere in Nyandarua. Anyway, let's see what they will do about it.
Oh, yes.
Let's get the day's diary.
And on today's diary, we start off with the cabinet retreat as of first highlight. And as we flip this diary with you, the first page, the National Executive will today continue the retreat in Naivasha and Nakuru counties. So the purpose of the retreat is to review the government's performance in 2023 and chart the way forward for 2024. On the next page of our diary is somewhere I want to stick for a bit as we take a look at the Parliament Committee's itinerary for different Parliament committees. The first one, as I highlighted there, the Public Debt and Privatization Committee will be meeting with Auditor General, that is Nancy Gathungu. But also the National Assembly Committee on Education is today going to have a meeting with officials from the Kenya National Union of Teachers to discuss matters employment and promotion of teachers. A final bit on the same itinerary of the Parliament committees. The National Assembly Special Funds Account Committee is scheduled to meet with Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service, that is KUSIP's Chief Executive Officer, basically examining reports of the auditor in relation to the mortgage scheme. All right, let's cross over now to matters party politics. And Wiper Democratic Movement Party leader Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka will be gracing the Institute of Certified Secretaries, ICS, in Naivasha, and later inaugurate the county government's convention, Lake Naivasha Resort. His tour began yesterday and all that. Let's finalize the diary with the last page, matters agriculture. And today marks the second and last day of the event, seeking to provide a platform to showcase latest products, services, and innovations in the agriculture space. I'll be telling you more about that. That is our news diary for you this morning. Let's get into the papers now.
Right, let's take a look at the Daily Nation this morning. Death traps in schools. They talk about reforms. Increased enrollment without sufficient expansion of facilities is a ticking time bomb. Families of children who died in schools under unclear circumstances are demanding answers for the tragedies. At the Daily Nation, this is. More alarming is the congestion in learning institutions. One primary school in Mwiki has 5,000 pupils crammed in an area the size of a football pitch that some teachers warn is a disaster waiting to happen. Now, this is a special report on the Daily Nation. They talk about safety standards manual where classrooms should accommodate a maximum of 40 learners. But the truth of the matter is they are getting more, about 60 to 70 students as well. Sharing of beds, spaces between beds in dormitories, corridors being 2 meters wide. Are they following those standards? Doorways to be at least 5 feet wide. Each dormitory to have a door at both ends, at least 4 pit latrines for every 30 learners. These are just some of the standards that are not being followed. And they've also shared photos of 5 learners who unfortunately have died while in school in very unclear circumstances, and their families are demanding for answers. That special report is on pages 6, 7, and 8 of the Daily Nation. The other news given prominence on the front page, of course, is an ongoing National Executive retreat, also called the Cabinet Retreat, happening at the Lake Naivasha Resort, led by President William Ruto. They've shared a photo of the session yesterday, in which it included also members of Parliament from the Kenya Kwanza coalition. And that session was quite a heated one. Ruto wants total loyalty from Kenya Kwanza MPs. The president reprimanded the legislators who are opposing government policies, including levies to fund housing and healthcare projects. Before we leave that area of the front page of the Daily Nation, there's one more highlight on crime. KNUT wants families of teachers killed by bandits compensated. And the Secretary General Collins Oyu laments the rising number of tutors killed in regions scarred by banditry. And the union is demanding state compensation for victims of these attacks. The other highlights are there on the top strip of the front page of the Daily Nation. The first one, public debt surges past 11 trillion shillings. And this is based on the weak shilling. Another highlight, Kenya Power billed Kenyans an extra 70 billion shillings. And interesting enough, they've put that highlight against a black backdrop. So they're talking about Kenya Power, and this is about electricity and lights, but there's a lot of darkness. Interesting. And matters health, why I want doctors to end my life. A very interesting story of a gentleman who wants to end his life medically. If you turn the paper, flip to the back page, public debt surges past 11 trillion shillings on weak shilling. External loan disbursements, exchange rate fluctuation, and domestic debt uptake cause increase. That's a big story on the back page. The other story, Kenya races to unlock 9 billion shillings US funds to boost transport network. And this is a grant by the US government with the creation of a special basket into which the funds would be channeled for use in traffic improvement projects in Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa. And those are the stories given prominence on the Daily Nation today.
From the Daily Nation, let's cross over to the Standard. Matters AU still making top big news on this front page. And they say Raila AU top job bid splits Azimio principles, and pictures there from Jubilee Jeremiah Kioni as well as Mwangi Iria. And there's a quote also by that is Kalonzo Musyoka. And they said his comfort. Leaders say the least ODM Supremo should have done is to inform them of the deals he was cutting with the president as a sign of respect and good behavior. Was on page 4. Other highlights on this front page, as expected, the cabinet retreat. On the left, cabinet face-off as ministers rate time in office, and continues for the next about now 3 days. On the front, rather the top strip, in red there, Ruto rails at his party MPs of a performance linked to whatever is happening in Naivasha. Away from that, race against time to finish Kiptum House for the burial, which is set for Thursday, right? It's on Thursday.
Not sure about the date, but
I think the end of this week.
Yes.
Yes. Matters taxes, Kere trains gun on diaspora. And in matters sports, I love the wordplay on this one. Tusker leaves teens with hangover. Yes. One more highlight before we cross over to the next paper, just below on the bottom of the Standard, what is going to be happening, and the in-tray in the Parliament, MPs to adopt dialogue report, start debate. And insert in the Financial Standard, how state plans to raid your pockets again to fund 4.2 trillion Kenyan shillings. Wow. Are your pockets ready to be raided? That is standard for you.
All right. Let's take a look at the Business Daily now. And the big headline on the front page of the Business Daily, how regulator inflated power prices by 70 billion shillings in 5 years. Agency misapplied formula that computes monthly bills. Energy regulator on the spot for illegal calculations. And the question is, will they refund? This story by Brian Ambani on the front page of the Business Daily. Consumers paid an extra 70.35 billion shillings in exaggerated power bills in the 5 years to February 2023 after the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority EPRA added illegal charges on their monthly fuel surcharge. And they have a graph of how those charges kept on increasing over the 5 years since 2018. That's a big story. The other big story, on money laundering, lawyers start reporting dirty cash in money laundering fight. Now, lawyers will from next month start reporting suspicious transactions by their clients to the Financial Reporting Center, FRC, in a major boost to fight in the fight against money laundering in Kenya. Other highlights of the ticker, that's the right-hand side of the Business Daily. 1, audit exposes wastage in World Bank Youth Jobs Plan. Elsewhere, Kenya's public debt crosses 11 trillion shilling mark. And ex-Scan Group CEO plans a 4.3 billion shilling suit against a WPP in UK. Now, this is an interesting story. Former Scan Group boss Bharat Thakar has threatened to sue the firm's parent WPP in the UK for what he claims were neo-colonialist and discriminatory practices used to eject him from the firm he founded in 1982. And that's the Business Daily.
Business Daily tunge kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo. Pressure Uhuru apewe kazi ya AU ndiyo taarifa kuu. Dokeza masuala ya mamlaka. Raila ametangaza nia kuwania wadhifa wa mwenyekiti wa tume ya Umoja wa Afrika AUC unaobaki wazi mwaka 2025. Aidha, dokeza kuwa baadhi ya wandani wa rais mstaafu wasema anafaa zaidi kuliko Raila kwa kazi hiyo. Kwingineko pale chini, taarifa ambayo ilikuwa kwenye gazeti la Daily Nation, naomba kuuawa. Joe amekata tamaa ya kuishi, mipango yake kuuawa kwa hiari imekamilika. Anahesabu tu siku kabla ya kusafiri hadi Ubelgiji kupewa kile ambacho unakiita kifo cha huruma. Habari kamili ni kwenye ukurasa wa pili, naweza angazia pale. Kwingineko, Mwamerika aliyepata uraia wa Kenya, mengine katika ukurasa wa 5. Kwingineko pale kando, mgogoro SUPKEM, Supreme Council of Muslims of Kenya. Balozi Yusuf Nzibo anayetaka endelee kuwa mwenyekiti akutana na polisi ofisini pamoja na kundi hasimu. Pale chini, wiki nzima bila kuoga shule nyingi Kenya. Ufichuzi wabaini shule zimejaa wanafunzi kuliko miundo msingi kama vile bafu na vyoo, kwenye ukurasa wa pili. And this reminds me back in the day, as much as there are these amenities, but then, and mostly in boys school,
oga ilikuwa nadra.
For whole, unaoga wakati kuna hafla ambayo tunaita funky. Hiyo ndio siku ambayo unaona mabasi ya shule yanakaribia, ndio wakati wa kuoga.
Hizo siku zingine sura tu
basi, na kutafuta ile spray yenye kila mtu anatumia. Kama ni axe,
the one that moves around the whole school.
Yes.
Okay. I think I went to school in very different times. I think we were much finer back then.
Vitukozo vingine kwenye gazeti hili, Ruto akemewa bunge wabishi katika kikao maalum. Rais asema baadhi yao wanapinga miradi yake. Na kwenye masuala ya michezo, UEFA Inter Atletico ni maviziano. Miamba wa Italia wakaribisha Jabali wa Spain, PSV wakialika Dortmund. Mengi ni kwenye ukurasa wa 20. Na hiyo ndiyo gazeti la Taifa Leo.
All right, let's move on to the People Daily. How Ruto spent 3.3 billion on luxury. That's the front page of the People Daily. Opulence budget chief indicts state for use of billions on recurrent expenditure, but a pittance for development. And they've broken down this expenditure on the front page. 700 million for the construction of modern presidential dais at State House Gardens. 400 million for the state purchase of motor vehicles. 16.3 million shillings purchase of East African Community Cabinet Secretary.
What? Penina Malonza's
official car.
Wow.
And then 1.6 billion to cater for the facelift of Kenya International Conference Center. International Convention Center, rather. Yes, and that's how they spent 3.3 billion shilling.
I'm still at
I thought they would actually add how much they've spent on development there.
Yeah, I'm still at the official car.
16.3 million. Well, you see, the thing with government is they buy the latest at the market price. So if it's a high-end VX V8, a 2020 edition probably, or 2021, yeah, more or less that figure. Also given prominence on the front page of the People Daily is the ongoing cabinet retreat in Naivasha, and where MPs, Kenya Kwanza MPs, held a parliamentary group meeting yesterday. And it reads, MPs get tongue lashing over jobs abroad. Yeah, the other highlight next to that, why Kenya faces zoonotic disease threat. On the top strip of the People Daily, two more highlights. On the top strip, IEBC on the spot over use of cash in last poll. And on the international front, AU summit rallies world support for Palestine. And that's the front page of the People Daily.
Right, let's go over to a paper that is free for you this morning and every single Tuesday, and a paper that is not reflecting on any other highlight that other papers are reflecting, actually. Matters AU and the cabinet retreat, and that is the Star. The Star goes way different with other papers, and they say state in a new plan to monitor your internet footprint. Say government regulations compel providers to disclose user activities on pages 4 and 5. So they've listed quite a number of the highlights of the cybercrime regulations, which include applicable to public and private sectors, establishes cybersecurity operation centers, state to vet outsourced external internet service providers, all critical ICT infrastructures to be housed in Kenya, and state to monitor internet footprints. Also, agencies to maintain database of persons visiting ICT systems. Meanwhile, no transfer of ICT systems and databases without the state approval. Also, state to keep database of cybersecurity institutions and professionals. And finally, on the highlights mentioned there, establishes cybercrime desks at every police station. And we'll wait to see how that will be working. Other highlights on the left, matters party politics, matters health, as well as a memoir there, somewhat. The matters party politics, new Kalonzo spoiling for war with president. They say ready to hit the road to a formidable 2027 political machine for the presidency that Kalonzo is positioning himself as the official, as a new opposition voice. Meanwhile, one day in 2007, Amina Abdallah was driving to work from her house in Bamburi, that is in Kisauni, when she saw something shocking and pitiful that will change her life. And she says, I saw a girl around age 21 or 22. She was walking naked. People were laughing at her. Small children were throwing stones at her. I had to stop. And how Abdallah came to help the mentally ill. Meanwhile, scared of the dead? It's just work. That is according to government pathologist Johansen Adwar. And according to him, when you look at me, how do I look? Like a disturbed person? And I remember him saying that for him, he prefers working and just being around the dead, because when you go and you come back, you'll find them there.
Very cooperative.
Yes. Oof. And that is that's just among the highlights on the front page of the Star. And they say it's a free copy, and inside is my government in there.
All right, our cue now to cross the borders and take a look at what's headlining in our regional neighbors. And we start off in Kampala, Uganda. The Daily Monitor this morning matters to do with the UPDF, what new UPDF structure means. It's a new outfit, a landmark reform of the national defense architecture, detailed in a new establishment document, has been clouded by a presidential announcement on Sunday that appeared to reappoint Chief of Defense Forces, General Wilson Mbadi, to the job he's holding. Interesting. And you have also a photo there of the Commander-in-Chief, General Museveni, and the person in charge, General Wilson Mbadi, who will also superintend the expanded Joint Services Headquarters and take full command of control of the army. Now they've broken down the entire hierarchy in the new UPDF structure on the front page, and that's all they have on the front page, no other highlights. They've actually dedicated the entire front page to matters to do with the new military structure in Uganda.
Up on the top strip, the other...
those are tenders and other things. There's
the
no
government
news.
moves to hook.
But on the new vision, still in Uganda, they talk about something else, and you had mentioned this.
Oh, yes.
The best EUCE teachers. This trend where they honor not just the top-performing students in schools, but also the teachers. And you see they take time. The first results come out, they splash the images of all the top performers, then the schools, then a day or two later, they bring the teachers.
Yes.
Top teachers share tips and winning formulas, and they've dedicated 3 pages to this, pages 4, 5, and 8. And yes, some of the faces of these top teachers are there on the front page of the new vision.
I'm curious what criteria they use to identify
it's
the best
easier
teachers.
Actually, because if at all your students have scored probably A's, out of 50 you have 40 A's in Kiswahili, then you're a top teacher.
I think in Kenya you should be doing this.
We're trying to get rid of this ranking system from schools to students. I don't think it's time to introduce it for teachers. But then again, it would actually work probably if we could honor teachers too.
Or probably just have a whole way, maybe if it's not ranking, but then actually, loading the teachers.
Right.
And not only even, forget about the schools, just, the teachers in different counties, teachers who actually deserve, being loaded.
Yes, indeed. It is a good gesture there. Also on the front page of the new vision, we have a photo there of new graduates from the Aga Khan University here in Nairobi. And they've also been honored by being splashed there on the front page. And Vision Group journalists awarded masters from Aga Khan University. And this is a media leadership and innovation of the Aga Khan University in Nairobi. And that's the new vision, big stories in Uganda today.
Let's see what is happening in Rwanda on the New Times, about 700 Rwandan francs. And the big story there, facility for highly infectious diseases under construction. So the center will serve different functions, including isolation, treatment, and training at regional level. More is on page 3. And also the Algerian Army Chief of Staff in Rwanda on official visit. And the Army Chief is called, all right, let me get that, General Said Shanirgira. I hope I've got the pronunciation right. Those are just among the what is happening in Rwanda. From Rwanda, let's cross over to Tanzania, and the equivalent of Business Daily in that country, The Citizen. They say 5 telcos fined 2 billion. Don't worry, it's Tanzanian shillings, as TCRA cracks down on fraud. So TCRA is the Tanzania Communications Regulatory Authority. Has cracked the whip on 5 top telco companies for flouting with the SIM card registration rules, as the regulator seeks to contain rising cases of fraud in the sector. I'll also quote a number of the numbers there for Airtel, Tigo, Halotel, Vodacom, as well as TTCL. On the bottom there, government now quotes Egyptians to invest in bats 13 to 15 at Darport. And that's just among what is happening. The whole Aga Khan also story focused on the Citizen. Aga Khan University seeks to transform East Africa's higher education. That is the Citizen.
All right. Utaendelea na gazeti la Mwananchi.
Baadhi ya vidokezo kwenye gazeti hili, and what we were one of our highlights actually. Siri sanamu za hayati Nyerere kuzua gumzo. Wadokeza baada ya wananchi kutoridhishwa na muonekano wa sanamu za baba wa taifa. Wataalamu na wadau wa sanaa waeleza sababu tofauti na sura halisi. Imechapishwa pale sanamu ya Nyerere iliyopo Butlama, ingine iliyoko kwenye bwalo la polisi Dar, lingine sanamu ya mnara wa San Mnanza, nyingine iliyopo Burigi Chato, nyingine kwenye makuu ya Ethiopia, pale square Dodoma. And when you look at some of all this, the nose is similar,
actually,
but
it looks something close. The one in Addis Ababa, and you see all these others look very close to what Nyerere looked like. The one in Addis Ababa looks almost like a Chingoneko. someone totally different. And you understand where the Tanzanians are coming from. How do you get this wrong? And you get so many presidents to come unveil a sculpture or a statue that is totally off. And it's a sad state of affairs. I hope they actually rectify it, because yes, there are so many other statues of the same leader, and they look very close to what he looked like. Yes. In fact, if you compare the last two, the one at the AU and the one at Nyerere Square in Dodoma, you can actually see those are two different people. Yeah.
But then if Nyerere was still alive, will he be looking like the AU's statue?
No way. You don't change your face. You don't change the way you look. You look a certain way. We know how Kenyatta one looked. You cannot change him and then he starts looking like Mandela or someone else.
Well, those are just but a few of what's happening across the globe. Let's cross over to our caricature and look at the cartoons as we wrap up the newspaper review.
Now, unfortunately, today we do not have the cartoon on the Standard, but we have one on the Nation and the People Daily. On the Daily Nation, page 17, matters on the cabinet retreat, and there's a weighing scale there, and it's calibrated between clueless, fumbling, and competent. And they have cabinet secretaries there lining up for each of them to take to stand on the weighing scale.
And see where
this is what is exactly happening starting today for the next 3 days. Each of the cabinet secretaries will be presenting a report on the performance of their ministries to the president in front of their peers. And so it is time for their competence or otherwise to be checked. Clueless, fumbling, or competent.
It's interesting, the first gentleman who has appeared and he's tiptoeing to it, and he looks worried.
Many should be worried.
Others are smiling. They're probably confident that when they stand on that weighing scale, it will go all the way to competent, but others are worried. Right, to matters the Mount Kenya and what is happening there. A gentleman running away from this mountain, which has erupted and a bill of black smoke, and he's coughing seriously. Seems as if
someone is very uncomfortable with the happenings, especially as far as politics is concerned, in that region. We'll be looking at these and other stories on the State of the Nation just after the break. And yes, that's how the panel looks like today. Njuguna Mwangi, governance expert; Alenga Torostat, policy and governance expert; Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo, and John Masaba, public policy analyst. These are the gentlemen who will be in studio this morning to help us look at the State of the Nation, a quick look at the headlines and the highlights and the big talking points that some have not even been captured on the dailies today, but are still big talking points nonetheless. After that, later on,
we discuss matters of the Kenyan shilling and why it really matters for you. Stella Soke, Senior Research Associate, SIB, as well as David Kavata, economist, as well as an entrepreneurship and innovation. Just understanding the Kenyan shilling, the dollar, recently,
yes,
the past week we've seen.
And you know what? It's important that people get a few tips and a few ideas of what's happening, because I've seen people on X and other social media trying to explain the shilling has done this to the dollar and the dollar is weak or strong. And it's always good to have some information. So you better watch that part of the show as well, so that when people are discussing the shilling against the dollar, at least you have an idea.
Content.
Yes. And of course, you can be part of this conversation on our social media pages, on X, at TV47 News, and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. You're watching Morning Cafe. And a quick look at the headlines. We start off with the Daily Nation: death trap in schools. And you're talking about the increased enrollment without sufficient expansion of facilities is a ticking time bomb. As I'd introduced my panelists earlier, we're expecting 4 members of this panel to be joining us. So far, John Masaba, public policy analyst, is in studio. Karibu sana. A very good morning. It's a pleasure to have you in studio. Now, we could start with this issue of education, because you're an economist and a public policy expert.
Yes.
And when it comes to government spending on education, against probably the UN recommended 15% of the GDP by governments, we see that Kenya is perhaps one of those that spend the least in matters of education. And a quick look at African countries. Namibia spends 10.03% of its GDP on education. Sierra Leone, 9.44%. Other countries like Lesotho, Mozambique, and South Africa, about 7.5 to 6.5%. But when we come to Kenya, which is way below, we spend only 4.59% of our GDP on education. Because the concerns we are seeing raised on the front page of the Daily Nation are concerns that would require huge resource allocation from the government perspective. Issues to do with congestion, issues to do with the standards of even the construction, bed capacity, spaces in hallways, the number of toilets available for these learners. All these are resource-heavy demands on schools, and the experts are now saying the way the expansion of facilities, the lack of expansion rather, is a ticking time bomb. Do you think there's a better way we can handle this situation, given the kind of constraints that the country is facing currently?
Thank you very much. I think the countries that you've mentioned, most of them don't have as many schools as we do. There's a lot of empirical research which gives Kenya scoring very highly on the number of schools per square meter.
Even South Africa?
In this dispensation, you find that Kenya is ranked topmost in Africa in terms of the number of schools after Nigeria. So if we find that with that in mind, then it becomes a bit challenging in terms of how to navigate on these issues. And yes, if you have rightfully said about the SDG, you have alluded to the SDG goals of better education and quality education for all. What we find in this part of town is that the implementation ratio of some of these nice projects is usually 0.4. Mm-hmm. So that means that money is not sent to the productive areas of the economy which need to sustain such kind of infrastructure. So I would agree with the columnist here that if we don't spend a lot of money on this particular sector, then we'll continue having such problems. Because for me, how I look at it mostly is monitoring. In accordance with what is expected, then you find that sometimes a lot of teachers are able to run away with a lot of things. It's just like a typical matatu. Before the onset of those rules, matatus would really overload passengers, and there was no one to
Should that
monitor.
be the way we should go? Probably, because yes, we've seen initially in matatus they used to seat 4 people every row. Now they sit 3.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to school, it would appear that these standards, because it's a manual, and the Daily Nation alludes to the manual on the front page, where classrooms should accommodate a maximum of 40 learners. Even in private institutions, that doesn't happen. You find 60, even 70 students crammed into one classroom. And that is just disaster waiting to happen.
Okay. For the private sector, I'll speak differently. It's coincidentally, I'm the chair of one of our PTA of school boards. And in that particular school, we are very strict in terms of the numbers. It is 25. We know there are many programs running, and sometimes an extra pupil means more revenue for the school, but it is capped. no teacher is allowed to admit past the number 25.
I'm a parent, and I know at a private school,
Yes.
at least the number is above 30, 35 there.
It depends on different institutions and what they have set out. In the school where I chair, maximum is 25. And we even have statistics, monthly statistics, to show the enrollment or how the attrition rate. And it is very important that from a government perspective, because the manuals are there, the policies are there, but the biggest challenge in sub-Saharan Africa, as propagated by World Bank and all the institutions, is the implementation ratio. We do not implement some of these beautiful directives. So it requires mind shift, paradigm shift, a serious paradigm shift, and it also requires a culture change and attitudinal change as far as institutional frameworks are concerned.
Okay.
Because we'll continue going round in circles to try and beat these declarations.
And let's be fair to the government, they've actually made tremendous strides and even increased the allocation to the education sector. As it is currently, 628, close to 630 billion shillings every year goes to education. But we still see these challenges persisting. Are you saying it's not an issue of how much money is pumped into the sector, it's an issue of those who are checking the standards?
Yes, for me, it's not really the monetary side. The monetary side is a necessary variable, but there is a variable that is very critical, which will help the necessary to be met, and that is monitoring. Because if there are no statistics, like the education office needs to know how many schools are enrolled in an area, including their names. They need to know whether do we have commensurate bed facilities, because you may find there's a class has 60, but in a boarding setup, when you go to the rooms, you find that their beds are not in tandem with the numbers that you're talking about. So there is no one to follow up and make sure that this one normally happens. So it requires a lot of attitudinal change, because when some of these officers go there to monitor, they're more interested with the per diems rather than to find out.
Does that office still exist? Because I remember back in the day, there used to be an inspector of schools who used to go around each school and inspect and probably do what you're talking about, the monitoring. Does that still happen?
Yes, we still have, on the record, we still have that particular office. And even with devolved units of government, you still find that there are a lot of collaboration mechanisms that were set out as per the Constitution 2010, where county government needed to liaise with central government as far as those issues are concerned. But the practice on the ground has been different. And all I'm talking about is just implementation ratio. Implementation ratio has been suffering over the period. So the inspectorate divisions exist, complete with set out manuals on how to do it. But in practice, you find it's a challenge. Yes.
All right. So far we've seen, and the Daily Nation has included photos, there are images of some of students who, unfortunately, have died while in school under unclear circumstances with no explanation offered by the school authorities. And many parents are now demanding answers. And you wonder, is this a direct result of this kind of congestion, this lack of standards, that even a medical situation or medical emergency is not attended to in a way that you can actually account for it, that you can offer an explanation from the word go that this learner was found in this situation and this is how they ended up in this other situation. And even as you get ready to answer that question, allow me to invite the other panelists onto the set. Karibu sana. Bwana Njuguna Mwangi, a governance expert, joining us as well. Good morning. It's good to have you in studio.
Morning.
Yes. Yes. Bwana Masaba, on that question of medical standards as well, because fine, we looked at the infrastructure, standards are not being checked. What about medical?
Okay. I talked about this collaborative mechanism, and in some schools, we are told there are some medical facilities which used to which are still there, Because even me personally, I think I've had my nanny telling me they need off to go and attend to their kid. And when asked about the medical, they said, yes, there is a cover that exists about the same. So I think the medical providers, when they come to ascertain the premiums that are going to be assigned to a school, of course, they have records of the number of kids in that school. And based on that, they'll be able to charge premium based on that. So from where I see it, the medical cover is sufficient to be able to take care of such issues when they occur. But the problem is not on the medical. The problem is more on the implementation of some of these directives. But there are twin factors which have to be looked at totally, because from where I see it, I think we are treating the symptom. The root cause of this is that sometimes when you try and interview teachers, you hear them saying that, parents dump our kids, they dump their kids here, you don't want to raise them in their homes and you bring them for us to raise them. So when they say that, sometimes they look at kids as people who have been dumped to them. Then there exists that general perspective which says that kids need to, if boarding schools were abolished, for example, we will not have some of these challenges. Because
are you one of those who do you oppose the boarding schools? Are you one of those who propagates the removal of boarding schools in Kenya?
For me, boardings will be from the age of 14 going up. Because
high school age.
Yes, because we are dealing with a person who is conscious of the surroundings and is aware. Sometimes some of these people, when they are mistreated, you'll not know. It's 5 years, 7 years, a kid is going through something. They do not have the mental capacity to actually know that this is right, this is wrong. Okay. So I think from the age of 14, parents should be allowed to take care of their kids, despite the challenges of modern living where they say they're looking for sustainable income. Let's bring
in Njuguna Mwangi into this conversation. Bwana Njuguna, you found us discussing the main headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. The headline reads, "Death traps in schools," and they talk about the increased enrollment without sufficient expansion facilities is a ticking time bomb. They've made a connection with the number of fatalities experienced in schools. And according to Bwana Masaba, who's an economist and a public policy analyst, he says it's not even an issue of resource allocation. It's not even an issue of money. It's the enforcement of these standards. Do you agree with that assessment?
Thank you, friend. As far as the issues of education is concerned, I feel like our government is really not doing the best in terms of enhancing the system of education in our country. And as my friend has just said, I still believe we have an issue with the management and the way the government is running the affairs of the learners. Because if you look at the system that we have, everything actually for any government to manage anything, the data is very, very important. But the way we have been seeing, somehow it's like our education system has been mismanaged by people who, the people we have given responsibility to manage it, do not seem to understand the kind of situation that we have on the ground. And that is why you can see that though the government is aware of that there will be, for example, this time round, the government has indicated that every child must get to Form 1 for the ones who did the KCPE. But then you realize that there is no commensurate effort to expand the infrastructures. You look at the confusion that we had a few months ago in terms of where the junior secondary will be, and all this confusion around that. It tells you that there is a lot that need to be done as far as the management of our education system is concerned. Okay. So I don't think really it's an issue of resources, as he says. but
So the money is there.
we have a
It's just
problem.
enforcement of standards.
Exactly.
Quick fixes there, because the Daily Nation has done us justice and even listed a few things which are required on the front page. For example, classrooms should only accommodate a maximum of 40 learners. Sharing of beds is prohibited, so admission should be linked to bed capacity. Dormitories, the space between the beds should be at least 1.2 meters. Corridors should be no less than 2 meters wide. All doorways should be at least 5 feet wide. Each dormitory should have a door at both ends and at least 4-pit latrines for every 30 learners. And the question is, these are simple standards that should be adhered to. And we see some very big schools that probably even have the money failing to do the same, failing to adhere to these standards. What can change? What is the problem here?
I think the problem still goes back to the people we have in the management of even these schools, because some of these things are, as you said, they are very simple standards that any other person can be able to implement. But again, even when we talk of the deaths that we have experiencing in schools, we may not just assume that it is because of these few issues that have been listed on the papers that are leading to such deaths, because somehow we have been seeing some challenges in terms of when you see a child has died at school, and then you find there is no clear explanation on how it happened. And I would give an example of an issue we had a few months ago at one of the schools in Nairobi County, a school called Kimathi Primary School, where we had a case where a boy child died allegedly in the swimming pool. But then when you look at the explanation by the management of the school, the directors of education, you find a lot of conflicting information. That now brings some questions around what is really causing these deaths. Sometimes it's not even the facilities not being enough, because if it's a matter of congestion, somehow we'll be seeing many cases happening in a particular school.
Okay.
So some of these things need to be investigated further so that we understand clearly what is causing these challenges. However, we cannot underscore the fact that there are infrastructural challenges, not because the resources are not available, because even schools that are well facilitated are still experiencing challenges. Parents are also giving out a lot of money in the name of expanding the infrastructure of the schools or improving the school infrastructures.
Right.
So we cannot really assume that it's the issue of resources only, but we need to dig deeper and understand what is really ailing our education system.
All right. You're watching Morning Cafe. It's time now for a break. When we come back, we'll be looking at the biggest discussion this week, and that is the AU Commission Chair's position, which Raila Odinga is gunning for. That after the break. Don't go too far. and the headlines that we have to look at this morning. I'm still in studio with Njuguna Mwangi, governance expert, John Masaba, public policy analyst, and now joining the panel, Wakili Ishmael Nyaribo. It's good to have you in studio, Wakili. Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I want us now to move to the other big talking point, and that is Raila's AU job bid. And according to the front page of the Standard, unfortunately, we do not have the physical paper. But my director, if you could beam that front page of the Standard. Yes, Raila AU job bid splits Azimio principles. Leaders say the least ODM Supremo should have done is to inform them of the deals he was cutting with the president as a sign of respect and good behavior. And now they say that they were not aware. And quotes there on the front page by some of the leaders who are feeling a bit unsure about how this deal came about. Yesterday, at the Kenya Kwanza Parliamentary Group meeting in Naivasha, legislators allied to the government and the Kenya Kwanza coalition endorsed this bid by Raila Odinga, and that is on page 4 of the Daily Nation. Kenya Kwanza MPs endorse Raila's quest for top AU seat. But now if you look at the Taifa Leo, habari kuu kwenye gazeti la Taifa Leo, na mwelekezi wangu akinisaidia pia kupeperusha hii hewani. Yes, pressure, Uhuru apewe kazi ya AU. Baadhi ya wandani wa rais mstaafu wasema anafaa zaidi kuliko Raila kwa kazi hiyo. Raila ametangaza nia ya kuwania wadhifa wa mwenyekiti wa tume ya Umoja wa Afrika AUC unaobaki wazi mwaka ujao. Now, all these things come into play now, but it is definitely the biggest talking point. I've seen other highlights, Kalonzo, and Wakili here talks to the former vice president quite a lot, and him saying that he is ready to take the mantle. And New Kalonzo, they actually call him New Kalonzo, spoiling for war with president. I've seen other highlights saying he's ready to take over, and I want us to start from there, Bwana Wakili Nyaribo. This has definitely changed the game for everyone, not just Kenya Kwanza, for ODM, for the retired president, for Raila himself. Everyone is affected by this single move if Raila actually gets the job at the AU.
Yeah, thanks Ndimuli for the invitation. And I just want to say that this is not just the usual jobs you apply for in downtown and hope, to be paid well and feed your children and it ends there. This is a very unique kind of position. It gives you an international outlook, and you're supposed to represent actually not only the country but also the unity of the African Union as a whole. Now, why are people affected about this? If I give you my personal opinion, I mean, this is all, much of it is really hate. If you look at, Azimio, when they talk about you should have told us before, they have a point, by the way. They do have a point, because perennially this has been the problem in the Azimio or in the opposition leadership in the country. Somebody goes and cuts a deal and does not inform the others, probably worried that the others might also put in their applications. So he goes ahead and cuts the deal. But that's a smaller problem when you look at what he is going to do at the union. That's a smaller problem. Why is it a smaller problem anyway? Nobody was going to fit that bill than Raila Odinga himself. Probably now, as they are saying, the former head of state. Mm-hmm. Those could be the contenders. Then you bring in other, leading lights. The president is already comfortable being a head of state. For me, I think the most important thing that Azimio has raised, every time there is a decision to move forward, it should be co-shared. It should be informed to all the principals and the main leaders within that particular party. But this is not the major problem that people should cry about right now. The issue is, like Kenya Kwanza has also now endorsed this particular, position. It is now to look forward and make sure we all support Raila Odinga, unless they want Raila and Uhuru to square it first locally and then decide, no, it's not Raila again, now it is Uhuru Kenyatta. But as long as one particular individual has been arrived at, I think important. I have a small challenge at the Law Society, and I'm not trying to bring that angle, but when you look at regional balance, what we are doing now, the challenge I've encountered is majorly that this region wants to present a particular candidate, and therefore we don't want you again to come in. It would look like you are spoiling for us. So this is the same thing that happens here. When a country has chosen a candidate, the mood is we must win that African Union seat. So I think the problem should not be he did not inform us. Why is he going there? There are other, theatrics. There are other things we can look at, whether Kenya Kwanza is genuine or is just fronting him that way so that we can have him missing in our local politics. Well, that again is not a major topic when you look at
whether they're genuine or not. They're definitely excited by this. The Kenya Kwanza legislators are happy about it. For them to actually endorse him this early, even with the mention of other possible candidates, for the legislators within Kenya Kwanza to come out and say we endorse Raila for this job, that is a lot of excitement, whether or not it's genuine, of course. Bwana Masaba.
Yeah, indeed, it is a different ballgame that we are witnessing right now. But I would also wish that we know that going forward, how do we elect the chair of AU? It is not clear. We don't know. None of us knows, because all the 54 member states have a say. And the way we are going about it is like it's already guaranteed and automatic from our side. So it's tantamount to driving a car that you do not even know where the brakes are, where the accelerators are, how to stop, how to resolve some of these issues. So I think as a country, in terms of promotion of unity, it's a good thing that the Kenya Kwanza regime has actually said, let us do this. Because, Kenyan politics is very polarized. And sometimes when these people are there on the ground campaigning and doing all those things, it really polarizes people. So when there is one force that is not there, at least you find that the elections will not be as divisive, as diversionary. So for me, in terms of looking at the ideals of unity and promotion of unity in the country, I think it's a good thing. In terms of being informed, I will also agree with Wakili that sometimes when you're entering into some of these things, it's good to remove mistrust by telling your opinion, your colleagues about it. We saw this in the handshake government. One day, I think it was March 18th.
Should we really look at this and compare it to that handshake? This is it's a job outside the country for one person only. It does not affect the local politics.
No, we are looking at are we communicating these things? Are we communicating? We can't come to this studio tomorrow without telling you. You just see us here, and you say we have to communicate and say that this is what we plan to do. And then you as a leader, if they're not in agreement, then you soldier on. But let the record be that at least we were able to communicate. So that speaks volumes about somebody's character. So.
Okay. But that unanimous decision by Kenya Kwanza legislators to actually endorse this, when there are other candidates, possible candidates being touted as well, it says a lot. Kenya Kwanza appear to have seen ahead and decided that this probably is the biggest problem we have. If we can fix this one, everything else we'll be able to handle. Is that a correct assessment? Or do you think they're misreading this?
Friend, when I see the leadership of Azimio really lamenting about them being not consulted by the former Prime Minister, I feel like these leaders are behaving like naive people, because this is not, it's actually not news that Raila Odinga is not consulting them. Because ever since, if you go to the history of Raila Odinga's politics, you realize that first of all, the important thing in any political arrangement he has is he always put his interests first. And that is, you remember even when we had the issues of the handshake, not even handshake, the swearing in when he did it against the law. You hear that Kalonzo Musyoka and Wetangula were caught off guard. They never knew that Raila Odinga will really go for that swearing in. You hear even he switched off the phones and such. So now when it comes now to the negotiation of the AU with the Kenya Kwanza faction, with William Ruto to support him, I don't think this is a new thing. It's actually in his DNA that he does not really consult or care about the partners he has in the leadership. You can see even the Azimio Council chairman, Uhuru Kenyatta, seemed to be not aware of what was happening. Probably he was even thinking, he was working around his own plans so that he can be in a position to get such a position. However, I still believe that Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, they are good personalities in terms of getting such positions. However, it seems like I don't want to read very much from the side of William Ruto, but I still believe he has a role. There is a very serious role he is playing in bringing these two leaders in a disagreement. Mm-hmm. Is actually a very good player in this politics, because if you look at the negotiations of that led to whatever we are calling the dialogue that we had at the Bomas, I strongly believe that this could be one of the areas that they negotiated with. That is both
away from the national dialogue process.
Exactly. Okay. But now you see they know how to use other leaders to propagate their own agenda. Mm-hmm. So a leader like Kalonzo Musyoka was kept busy trying to bring this dialogue together with the Ichongo, but and you can see very well that Raila Odinga seems not very interested in that dialogue thing. Okay. The most important thing was to massage the egos of the supporters of Raila Odinga so that they can understand why he is urging them to move from the demonstrations and go back to work. But then there was something bigger that he was waiting for.
Yet these individuals within Kenya, within Azimio, have always said that they're willing and they are ready to succeed Raila Odinga. Yeah. How do they look like right now? They are flabbergasted, they are lost on words. Yeah. They've been caught off guard.
I actually like the way Njuguna has put it. Earlier, I didn't like how he started to attack. But he has actually saved himself from the very correct analysis in terms of, the Wiper leader was, given all the facilitation he needed to do the national negotiations, while William Ruto knew probably that is it, after that, so what? And to answer the so what, he knew, how can I bring the former head of state and Raila Odinga into loggerheads? So, presidents have privy, are privy to, higher intelligence and information, and I'm sure he looked ahead and knew probably there would be an African Union slot. So I think that there is no time Kenya Kwanza will give Azimio a chance to thrive and flourish. Any politician who thinks like that, then is not worth the salt. On that, I agree with Njuguna. So I think that Kalonzo Musyoka should have learned well in advance that what we are doing is good for the country, but it could be a game. He should always have that proviso that it could be a game, and in case it's a game, what's my plan B? So he should have come out quickly and actually apply for the African Union job.
Mm-hmm. Kalonzo himself.
Yes, he actually also fits the bill. In fact, I think they are all equal in terms of him going to the African Union. So he would have now also campaigned, with the head of state, with the other African Union leaders. Don't forget that the members of the African Union are really the ones who finally vote you in. But they also rely so much on the kind of information they are getting from the host country of a candidate. So, and I don't think Kalonzo Musyoka has been in foreign ministry and he has performed exemplary well. So he should have known that these negotiations these good guys have put me in could be a game. Now, you say, why then doesn't Raila speak to them and what? You know, in political machinations, you've got to be smarter than your neighbor. If you are not, there is no time you'll beat him. So if Raila then is able to outsmart even the former president and Kalonzo himself I mean, you say, like Masaba, I said, you should share information. That is true. But not sharing, again, is correct in political circles.
Politics, yeah.
When you want to win, it could be a strategy so that you win. So you should be smart enough to actually go scoop the information even when it is not shared. So I think we can't blame Raila, let him contest. But again, there is time. If Kalonzo wants, he can petition the African Union. He can go around, you know, other leaders in the country and say, no, I also want it. But that trying to create a confrontation between the former president and Raila Odinga is not missing from the subject, because that would be the best thing for the Kwanya Kwanza leadership. Yes.
Right.
And you know, Fred, when you look at some of these things, like I said, sometimes we might be shooting in the dark. We don't know what's happening. In the requirements for you to be an AU chair, there is a requirement. There's an academic requirement. You must have a master's degree in law, business administration, and many others, or a PhD in diplomacy, management, or business administration. It's there. So we don't know.
I'm wondering whether
Question is, are we saying that no one up until now knows that these are the requirements? That the president of this republic, Raila Odinga himself, even those other people talking about this, that they are not aware of this?
That's exactly my point.
Maybe, friend, I wish to add on what my friend has just put. The issue of academic qualifications are very important in this position. But however, if you look at the people who had the former occupant of the same position, and you dig deeper into the academic qualifications, you realize that this position is more of peers amongst the leadership of Africa, and not necessarily the academic qualifications as they have put it. Because if you look at, like now, the champion of the one who restructured from OAU to AU, the Amara Essi, from, I think, Cote d'Ivoire. This guy was a former foreign affairs minister of that country, meaning he had strong ties across Africa. The ties that he had with other countries was very, very important, not necessarily the academic qualification. If you look at the one who succeeded him, Alpha Conale, who was a former president of Mali, you realize that the voters who are the heads of states and government are the people who always vote for somebody they feel is of their class and their levels. People like Jinping from Gabon, who succeeded Konale, was also a former foreign affairs minister of Gabon.
With not necessarily not
necessarily those qualifications, and that's why I feel like if we have the two contestants, major one we know, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, those two guys form a very strong candidature. In fact, I would not be surprised to see whoever has interest in Raila Odinga's candidature trying to look for or sending emissaries to Uhuru Kenyatta to step aside. Because if Uhuru Kenyatta now comes in, you will find some other countries that we really rely on or depend on, like the Tanzania, DRC and such. We might find Raila Odinga losing it to Uhuru Kenyatta. So I don't think really academic qualifications will be the major determinant in this game.
Yeah.
In any case, I don't know if they also pray aloud with the academics.
There is a rider at the very bottom of that,
Yes.
and if because you have it open,
I think they should say,
there is a rider.
if you have a master's,
this
you have
can be
an added
adjusted.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have it?
Should be an added advantage.
There's a line at the very end that says that some of this may be adjusted, and I think that's what they're relying on, because we could just be reading it at face value. Because I don't think it would be normal for so many people at that high level to ignore such obvious requirements. But back to this issue of how the Azimio team has reacted to this. They quickly came up with a press conference and say they do support, but then days later now we're seeing that there are complaints, murmurs here and there. And do you really believe that they were caught flat-footed, that none of them had an idea? They've been calling for the retirement of Raila Odinga from politics. They've been asking him to actually prop up a successor. Why would they be complaining right now?
I want to borrow his words when he said we might be shooting in the dark. Because, you see, in this high-level leadership, you can actually be bundled into office even when you don't want. I mean, I'm aware of the example of Mwai Kibaki when he sort of wanted to do a term and the people around him said, no, Mzee, you have to be there. So I think Azimio are realizing that the forces that are taking Raila Odinga to African Union may not be Raila Odinga himself. They
wanted him to retire at their own terms?
They probably want him, you know, the forces could be wanting to, first of all, make sure that Azimio is divided and disintegrates. That's one possibility. Possibility number two, they want him to be out of Kenya for a long time. I mean, not out of Kenya per se, because the position doesn't really expel you from the country. I mean, you'll still be around. But the level of engagement in political campaigns and going around the country becomes quite diminished because of your stature and who you are.
The office is in Addis Ababa.
Yeah. I mean, offices, you can do virtual now. You know that you can do virtual offices. But, I mean, in terms, that's why you saw Azimio saying, we will still come in and fit Raila's shoes. I mean, even if he goes to the African Union. But like you asked, I think Azimio are realizing that this may not be a normal application and a job. It could be forces bent on making sure Azimio disintegrates, and now you can see they have brought in the former head of state. They want that bad blood to exist so that the Azimio supporters and principals can now get a way to come out of the coalition.
Okay. Do you think that this, as Wakili put it, is a stroke of political genius by President William Ruto? He's managed to get, if successful, get Raila Odinga out of the equation and at the same time ensure Azimio disintegrates?
For me, when I saw the press conference, I saw on the side the former president of Nigeria, Olusegun, was standing next to the former prime minister. And for me, that was really a telling sign in terms of, was he looking for endorsement, or is this a leader who everyone can aspire with? And then by standing next to him, we are telling the whole of Africa that this is the route to go. I think for me, I've said it time and time again, the president was really, he did very well. It was a masterstroke in terms of what he did to try and make sure that, like I said, our politics is very divided, polarized, 50-50. So when you try and get somebody out of the way so that it becomes easier now to be able to rule, because sometimes, you know, in all the regimes has shown that whenever you're ruling, there's always a card that is brought, and when the March 18th handshake happened, even the current president was surprised. He didn't know about it. Okay. Yeah, so I think it's a masterstroke now for him. And
Bwana Njuguna, let me ask a very interesting question, because now it is said that especially within the Mount Kenya region, the voting patterns or the decision on who to vote for, especially for the president, has been largely informed also by the presence of Raila Odinga on the ballot. That many people are voted out of fear, that they were told that man, no, is not a good man. Then they ensure that they vote to ensure that he does not get that position. With the exit of Raila Odinga from the local politics, if at all is successful, do you really think that that could affect the way Mount Kenya make a decision on their vote come 2027?
Even before I give my opinion regarding the behavior of the Mount Kenya voters, let me try to lead a bit of what is happening, especially on the game plan towards 2027 by President William Ruto. Because if you look at how William Ruto has been operating, you'll be able to see from far that he's more interested on his succession in 2032 more than the 2027 re-election bid. Because if you look at the way he's playing his games, he seems very confident that in 2027 he will not have much opposition. In fact, I would still believe that could be the reason why he's pushing too hard to have Raila Odinga get a better job out there other than putting the sufurias on the head, so that in 2027 there would not be much opposition, especially from the Nyanza region and the bloc that votes for Raila Odinga. And then you realize that he's really working very hard to deal with whoever made him a king. And you know, the kingmakers, as we always say, when the king assumes office, his first assignment is to deal with the kingmaker. And you saw it when he became the king. When William Ruto was sworn in, you would feel some pressure, especially on the side of Rigathi Gachagua and the mountain. Because with the Mudavadi being brought on board, being given the position of the prime minister and being the overseer of government projects, you would feel like the deputy president was left in cold a bit. And I still believe that this game plan that is happening, the exit of Raila Odinga, will mean that William Ruto has been able to empower Musalia Mudavadi for the succession in 2032. And now, when you look at what is happening to his very close allies, especially in the mountain, the likes of Dede Nyoro, who has come out to appear like he's now wrestling it out with the deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, you can tell this force is actually not coming from Dede Nyoro himself. There could be other powerful forces that are actually propagating this.
The deputy president?
Exactly.
Which other forces more powerful than?
And of course, your guess is as good as mine. But I can tell you that the mountain, who were the kingmakers, led by the Rigathi Gachagua himself, they can, if they are not very careful, there are high chances that the succession politics of 2032 could find them being wiped out of the way in 2027, so that William Ruto can bring the successor himself in 2027.
And I still want you to answer my question about what Raila's exit will do to Mount Kenya. But before you do that, allow me to welcome Alenga Torostat to the panel. Karibu sana, Alenga. When Alenga is a policy and governance expert, because I'll also want to get his comment on this issue of the AU job for Raila and what it means for Kenya's politics. But Bwana Njuguna, yes, back to that question on how does Raila's exit affect Mount Kenya politics?
I believe, you see now, for example, in the just ended general election in 2022, Raila phobia was not that very much. In fact, the mountain always vote for, because of the sympathy. And that is how William Ruto got it right, because he made sure that he operates like the victim of the system, the so-called deep state. And that is how he was able to win the hearts of the mountain. In fact, whatever is happening to the deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, appearing like he's being fought by other forces, is actually a very good problem to Rigathi Gachagua, because he now becomes the victim. And in fact, that is a way of elevating Rigathi Gachagua into kingpin of the mountain. So the exit of Raila Odinga may not have much effect in 2027, because the Raila phobia is already, is not so much deep-rooted like it used to be some years back. After Uhuru Kenyatta now brought him as the candidate, as the preferred candidate, Uhuru Kenyatta became more of the enemy than Raila Odinga himself. So today, I don't believe there will be much effect in the decision of the mountain. The decision of the people from the mountain will depend on how the William Ruto and his team will treat Rigathi Gachagua by 2027.
Okay. Yeah. When Alenga Torostat, you found us discussing this AU job that Raila Odinga is hoping to get. And the main discussion has been on how it affects the political landscape here in Kenya. There's a lot of excitement from the Kenya Kwanza side. Azimio, as we look at the headlines, meanwhile appear to be complaining to some extent that they were not told and they were not aware. Yet they're the same people who are calling and urging Raila Odinga to actually focus more on his succession and towards retirement. And I just want to get your quick comment on that before we take a look at the cabinet retreat.
Thank you, first of all, Indimuli, for welcoming me on your show once again. I truly appreciate. I think Raila's bid for the AU job has implications to different quarters. First of all, to himself. I think this is a very organized exit strategy for him. And as always, he gets it right in morphing himself even after a very huge fall. So I think I would really, really appreciate the fact that he has edged out a very creative exit strategy for himself. Number two, the other implication is to the larger Azimio family. Right now, once Raila exits the scene and joins the AU, which then does not allow him to actively participate in local politics, then we have a question of who takes next. And if you have looked at the remaining people in Azimio, all of them consider themselves as primus inter pares, first among equals. So definitely there's going to be a very, a moment of confusion on who takes over, and definitely that is going to yield into breakups within the Azimio coalition. And definitely we'll find every other person going their way and facing William Ruto on the ballot on their own.
You don't see Azimio sticking together up until 2027, especially with the exit of Raila?
It will not hold, because the only thing that has been holding it together is that fear to directly challenge Raila and tell him, say, Dan, I want to buy next. Okay. So this time round, everybody is going to say, I think I am ready for this. I think I am ready for this. So what that will bring is a breakup. And then also the Luo factor in terms of control of the ODM party is also going to be besieged in a way, because if you look at particularly the deputy party leaders of ODM, we have Ali Hassan Joho from the coast, and we have Honorable Paranya from Western. So these are not people who are going to sit pretty and wait to be, as we say, to be arranged by now the larger Luo following within the ODM party. So definitely there's going to be a friction. Are we going to give our party away maybe to the deputy party leader who is from Western or from Coast, or we have to look for someone within the larger Nyanza region to take over? So that also will bring breakups within a second tier of breakup now within the ODM party. And then now to the other players in the Kenyan politics, that would be a moment of silence, a moment of celebration, that the only person that would have stood up to us is now out of the way. So then it becomes easier for William Ruto to take his tenure to 2027 and thereafter to even win the election in 2027 and complete his second term in 2032. On
the front page of the Taifa Leo talks about other people calling on Uhuru Kenyatta to be given this job. Pressure Uhuru apewe kazi ya AU. Do you think that this could actually change the game, if at all the pressure increases?
I think if you look at the body language and the haptics about the former president, he's not really showing like he's interested in this thing. So, and actually, if you have looked at him since he went into retirement, he seems to be a man who has assumed his position outside there and is just comfortable. He will show up in public once in a while, then he disappears. That is what he likes to be. So I don't really think he would be wanting to come and fight with Raila on that AU issue. And then also their arrangement with Raila towards the election of 2022. You remember he supported Raila, and even after the election, he said, this is my candidate. So I do not think politically he'll again want to say, now I want to challenge this man that I supported in 2022, the man that I said, even though he failed the election, is my president. So there's some form of indebtedness from Uhuru Kenyatta.
Okay.
If at all, he will just help to facilitate Raila.
Okay. So, gentlemen, I think we've spent a lot of time on that issue, and I want us to take a look at something else, and this is an ongoing cabinet retreat in Naivasha. Yesterday, the Kenya Kwanza parliamentary group was in Naivasha as well, so they had a collective national government stroke parliamentary group meeting at the Lake Naivasha Resort. Very interesting scenes coming from there. The president calling out members of parliament who do not necessarily support some of his policies. And we had some mamas, Bwana Masaba, and this is unlike before. And we had, because the president, and if you look at the dailies, Ruto wants total loyalty from Kenya Kwanza. That's the front page of the Daily Nation. Cabinet face-off as ministers rate time in office. That's a different one. But there's somewhere where, I think it was the People Daily. Yes. MPs get tongue lashing over jobs abroad. And we had that video where the president was trying to explain what he's doing, and then the MPs started shouting there. And basically they were saying that they do not understand or they are not involved in this. The president has enjoyed control over the houses of legislation, his numbers in parliament, and he is looking to bolster the same because now he has the affordable housing bill already before the House. Do you think he still enjoys that kind of control? And do you think this kind of heckling should be judged in any other way?
Okay,
let's not even call it heckling, just people raising questions about some of the policies he has.
Okay, in terms of control, I think President enjoys absolute control over both houses. And as a leader, you know, sometimes as a leader you have to walk the talk. And as a leader you must be prepared to make decisions, because sometimes we've accused many people, all of us have read leadership theories, but we never walk the talk in terms of who a leader should be. A leader is supposed to come out and just show us the vision, show us the mission, and show us where he wants to take us. If you look at his campaign, President Ruto's campaign, he came up with the bottom-up economic transformation model, and he talked about many things in his manifesto. And basically what he was telling the people yesterday in Naivasha is, you walked the journey with me when we went around all the places campaigning about what we shall do. So how comes now that it is time to implement these things, you guys don't want to really walk the talk? You see now, what options are you faced with as a leader when your people are not really towing the line as far as that? And that's why we are talking about disparity. And what are the two issues that they're talking about here? One of them is the universal health coverage. That is something that needs a lot of attention. And then the affordable housing. Those are things that he talked about. According to him and his team, these are the things that we really need to work and make sure that we see the light of day. So when he sits in a retreat like this and tells his people that they are disloyal, it's a really daunting picture in terms of what the people aspire and believe in. And you know, when the people also, to answer your other part of the question, when they actually heckle them, then it means that quietly, remember these members of parliament are representing a million other people elsewhere. And sometimes when they go to their homes, they have already been earmarked and they have been told that you people, we are not going to think about you in 2027 because you didn't do this, you didn't do that. In fact, we saw somewhere there people saying anyone who voted for the finance bill, we are going to catch up with you later in 2027. So what happens to the members of parliament? They're caught between a rock and a hard place, because on the one side you have to please your boss, the executive, but on the other side there's allegiance to the constituents who will remember the actions that you did. So some of them, when they actually heckle the way they did, they are actually trying to find a place in this dispensation. But rightfully so, the president campaigned on those grounds, and he is trying to walk the talk and make sure that he has full support, because when you remember at the beginning of this project, we talked about implementation. When you have beautiful policies and they are not being implemented, then 2027, it will be a challenge when he goes back to the electorate and tell them, this is what we are supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wakili Nyaribo, it was a glimpse of what the truth probably looks like. The cameras just showed us the president, and we could hear voices in the background. We did not get to see the kind of reaction, but we could hear people asking questions or challenges, and that is something we've not really seen openly, especially within Kenya Kwanza circles. The story has always been that the president's word is law. But when we hear Kenya Kwanza legislators asking questions, it means not everyone is in agreement with all these government policies.
Yeah, that is one. But I think from where I sit, the major problem is capacity of the men and women that the president appointed to office to help him implement his agenda. Because you look at the type of people, you look at their, forget about theoretical academic qualifications, but look at capacity of an individual to understand healthcare, to understand the housing program which the president wants to ride on. This is the major problem. What can you expect from a person who honestly has no capacity? There's nothing you can expect. Mm-hmm. So I think, and again, no corporate entity.
Cabinet members.
Yeah, I'm talking about cabinet members, all the people around him. And I'm not blanketly saying everybody, is not up to the task, but the key ministries, key departments, the head of state has allowed his friends to sit there. His major consideration was that when you look at his appointment in a particular region and what they are supposed to do, these are people who will easily sing to his tune. Mm-hmm. You've seen an article, I saw an article in the paper here saying the head of state is overemphasizing on his self-importance as an individual. I mean, you must appreciate that other people around you have ideas, have opinion to share with you. So you cannot simply tell them, you must all toe the line or ship out. So I think that's where really the problem is. The head of state should be a consultative personality. He can sit down with his cabinet, listen to them, not just artificially agree, but then go back to implement what he has in his mind. You must show a lot of respect to human capital.
Do you feel the president is doing the same even with the Kenya Kwanza legislators? Yes, he has control over both houses, but do you feel like he's doing less of listening to them and just talking at them?
He actually sends them to go and implement what he wants. Mm. He actually tells them this must be implemented. If it's not implemented, you will see. So people are now starting to realize that, oh, the king has gaps. So, okay. That's how his own, Kenya Kwanza leadership can actually complain against him now openly. That's how they are going all over saying, oh, we thought this could happen, but it's not happening. So I am sure now they have realized that the people's power will be questioning them in 2027.
Wananjuguna, there's something interesting happening even on while we try to constitute these panels every morning. That initially we had a lot of Kenya Kwanza MPs very much willing to come onto the panel and defend the government position. Right now we're seeing a lot of reluctance, and I'm being honest in this. I'm seeing quite some reluctance, especially from legislators within Kenya Kwanza, to come and defend government policy. Do you think that what we had yesterday in Naivasha could be part of the reason? That maybe they've not fully bought into some of these ideas and they're just required to implement it without changing anything?
Friend, I think, I've been interacting with some of these members of parliament at my place of work. And from what I see, I feel there is a major communication breakdown between the executive and also the legislature. And I would partly agree with the Wakili here that some of these presidential appointees seems clueless of what is happening in their ministries, as the president alluded to some times back. In fact, when I was here on this bench last time, I stated very clearly that from where I sit, I say like the president and the deputy president seem to be the only people who understand the agenda clearly, because anytime the president is even addressing the nation, you feel many people who could be having problems with his agendas, they seem to understand exactly what he wants. But then he cannot keep on coming to address the nation every time just to explain an agenda of his government. He has foot soldiers. And these are the people who, from where I sit, are failing the president. I was following very clearly, very keenly the PG yesterday. And we need also not to make things look so bad, because the president was addressing the members of Kenya Kwanza. And they were very keen, very attentive, until that, when it got to that point where he said that there are some jobs, 2,500 jobs abroad. And members of parliament were like, hey, where are these jobs? We do not have any information. He, in fact, called on the peers, I think, Modime and the CS Bore. And you would see the president very bitter with the fact that the members of parliament are not aware of this. Of course, he has to protect his cabinet by blaming the members of parliament for not following the papers, the newspapers that he always fights. But I think the problem that we have is actually some incompetent appointees of the president. But then the members of parliament that we have also, we must agree that the UDA fraternity, much as we don't want to assume they are not competent, the members of parliament per se, most of them are in their capacity just because of the party euphoria that we had in 2022. And in fact, many of them are taking time to understand how the government lands and how to work with the executive. So when you are calling some of these members of parliament and they are failing to come out, it's probably because some of them do not understand that their role is actually to oversight the executive. Some of these members of parliament do not understand the importance of the PG, for example, the PG we had yesterday, they had yesterday. In fact, I strongly feel that we have a president who is very consultative, because you remember during the Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure, we used to have problems going for 2 years without a PG of the Jubilee Party. Now, our president, by the virtue of calling these members to a PG, a retreat with the CSS and such, it tells you that the president wants teamwork in implementing his manifesto. Okay. And he's very clear and he's very right that this manifesto, we did it together with you. But if you're not supporting an agenda of the government, that does not mean that he's becoming dictatorial. He's only reminding them that this manifesto is ours and we developed together.
Torostat, we've had this president say, with regard to the finance bill last year, telling parliamentarians, I want to see who will not vote for that one. And now we're seeing him at trying to explain something else that the members of parliament clearly had to some extent lack of clarity on. Do you agree that probably the president could be just talking down at the legislators and not really consulting, as Njuguna says that he is a very consultative president?
For me, Ndemoli, two things come through from that. The video clip that has been shared of the PG in Naivasha. And one of them is what the president termed as, the president said, he put it in Kiswahili and said, when I say these things, what do you think I'm saying? When you hear me say, what do you think I'm saying? So, and then there's another part he said, whenever I go to your areas, I'm being approached by people telling me so-and-so failed to clinch the seat in the elections, find something for him. So those two things converge at one point, that number one, the president is looking inward and seeing, you know, Kenyans have labeled him as saying falsehoods like almost all the time. So he was trying to ask these guys, even you who sit close to me, you don't believe me, you know. So that then addresses the question of, is he leading the country in reality or make-believe, you know? So then if he has to remind us that there are things he said, and with those things we can find them in the newspapers, then there's a problem there. And number two, that issue of him saying that he's being pressurized to give employment to certain people, then that converges with Wakili's point of incompetence. So, because if you look through across even the legislature all the way to the cabinet, you realize most of the men and women who sit in those positions are there through serendipity. But then incompetence has caught up with them. Mm-hmm. But then how better would the president have handled this? For me, I think the president was very quick in dispensing of the people that were in the previous regime, whom he'd have left behind at least a few people that understand how government works, and then they would help him with the benefit of institutional memory. Mm-hmm. So starting from a whole new card based on how he had campaigned through this election, there was a lot of animosity between the government of the day and the people who were supporting him. So he quickly dismissed all these people and brought in new people. So there is a price to pay here. If you bring in totally new people that have not been in governance, they have not been in these key positions, they do not understand how systems work, they have to learn on the job. So while they are learning on the job, can we then admit that the first term of the president, he will find a hard time fulfilling the mandate that the promises that he gave to the people, because the team he has is also just trying to catch up, is also just trying to understand what that means. And there are some people that maybe were just brought in by their colleagues and they do not really understand what the manifesto was, what they did talk about, and how are they going to achieve this. So there is a price we have to pay now, all of us, for these first 5 years. Inshallah, if they get into the next term, then at that point, I am thinking and believing that the president will now be no longer indebted to someone politically, and then he can now choose a team that he thinks can play well and achieve his goals. Okay. But as for now, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I'll give you a minute to comment on this as we wrap up. He's asked them to read the newspapers. Surely, if at all communication was appropriate, they would not be needing to get this information through the newspapers.
Thank you, Bwana Ndimuli. I think, just to answer the question that you asked, why aren't the Kenya Kwanza MPs coming? You see, they found themselves in a very hard place because, you know, Kenyans have become more enlightened. We've seen places where people are shouting down at these rallies. So these people fear when they come here and they have ambitions in 2027. Kenyans are watching, and now there's social media, there's a lot of information. People will use that. So the president may be passionate about ABCD, which is good, but now the MPs fear that I will come here and people will see what I said and they will follow me for that. So probably that could explain that, as opposed to the incompetence that Juguna is saying. But all in all, I think the president is in charge, and as a leader, you sometimes you must walk the talk. You know, we have seen models in African countries where that you must have that tendency to tell people where you want to go and just make them go there.
Okay, Wakili, 1 minute as well.
That speaks about who a leader must be. You know, if you come into office, try to maintain some institutional memory. You don't take things personal. I think that a good leader will even work with an opponent, in fact, call him an enemy, for the sake of the people of the country. That's why you see in developed economies, you compete with people, but after the elections, you actually have to shake hands, because now you're looking at how to develop the country. I think there was a problem when Kenya Kwanza came into office, and they were emotionally terrorizing everybody who was not with them in the previous regime. I think that was a mess, that was a miss, and it should be corrected. A leader should be accommodative at all levels.
Okay, 30 seconds only.
Okay, friend, allow me to not speak on that because I'm crossing.
It's okay.
Because
in fact, our time is up. So
sorry,
30 seconds.
I've just seen somebody asking me from my phone about why I still believe that Rigathi Gachagua can still make it even in future. But I just want to respond on that Rigathi Gachagua seems to be a very, very smart politician, so to speak. And you can tell very clearly when he was being appointed by the president, former President Daniel Moi, to become the PA of his presidential candidate, Uhuru Kenyatta. You can tell this man must have been seen as a smart person.
Okay.
The way he has also come in after the death of his brother, Derito Gachagua, and got into his shoes to become the member of parliament for Madeira, one-term member of parliament, and then shooting all the way to the deputy president, that tells you a lot. In fact, if I can say, the way he is learning since the time he was sworn in, this man seems to be a very good student. He has changed so many things even in terms of the way he speaks, the way he responds to the critics, the way he manages himself. And I still believe this is a personality to watch in the future politics, especially from the Mount Kenya region, as opposed to the new breeds that we are still seeing.
Okay, asante sana. Njuguna Mwangi, governance expert. Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate of the High Court. Alenga Torostat, policy and governance expert. And John Masaba, economist and public policy analyst. Our panelists this morning helping us look at the state of the nation and the headlines on the dailies. Now, quick to our editorial comment this morning. Now, today we welcome the decision to crack down on vehicles illegally fitted with strobe lights and sirens as a necessary measure to restore sanity on our roads. For far too long, a number of motorists have wielded these unauthorized accessories as tools of intimidation and entitlement, turning our daily commute into a nightmare. They defy lane discipline, careen down roads with flashing lights blaring, and flout every rule of the road with impunity. It is a blatant violation of the Traffic Act, which strictly limits the use of sirens to authorized vehicles like police cars, ambulances, and fire engines. Anyone else wielding such equipment is breaking the law, plain and simple. But now, Head of Public Service Felix Koskei has authorized a renewed crackdown on these rogue vehicles, sending a clear message to all road users: enough is enough. The process outlined by Koskei for obtaining approval for the use of these accessories is clear and fair. It ensures that only those with a legitimate need can access them, while also holding accountable those who flout the rules. But for this directive to be effective, law enforcement agencies must now play their part in restoring order to our roads. Over to you, Police Inspector General Japheth Koome. It is time for those who feel entitled to special treatment on our roads to wake up to reality. Your urgency does not justify endangering the lives of